the Hustle Show podcast for a Hustle Short here on this Monday, September 25th, as we get set for two contests on Monday Night Football. I'm Mark Zinno, joined by Adam Trigger. Want to remind you guys, make sure you smash that like button on the Wager Talk YouTube page, as well as like the Hustle Show podcast and on social media at Hustle Show Podcast on Instagram and on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it. But we got two games here on Monday night. Last week, we're doing the two games on Monday night, Trig. So the double dip tonight, starting out with the Eagles and Buccaneers in the first game, then L.A. and Cincy, the Rams and Cincy coming up at 8:15 Eastern. All right, Philadelphia and Tampa Bay. I'll say this much. To me, it feels like the entire world is on Tampa tonight. I guess it's the sharp side. We've seen nothing but money come in all week long on Tampa. This line opened up at 6.5. We're seeing 4.5s in the marketplace now when you look at the Wager Talk odds screen. So it's been holding pretty steady there. But for the most part, Trig, I mean, everybody, everywhere I look, I see Tampa.
Mark, I got to be honest. I agree with you. The sharps seem to love the Bucs here, and it's been all sharp money on the Bucs. I can't really figure out why, to be perfectly honest. So let's go back to the Eagles' first 2 weeks, right? Like, I guess in theory, it makes sense to want to fade the Eagles because they really are kind of like an overvalued team. I talked about this coming into the season. I like their season win total under. I just don't know that they're the team that gets back to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, if you look at what they did in the first 2 weeks, sort of a lucky cover against the Patriots, could have gone either way. And then, against the Vikings, depending on what number you had, you maybe got the money, you maybe not, but there was also a play in that game right before halftime that really flipped the game. I mean, it looked like the Vikings were kind of on their way to controlling that game. Justin Jefferson fumbles into the end zone. And of course, it kind of, alters the path of that game. Now, the reason I don't have much interest in the Bucs here is I'm a little bit worried about what Baker Mayfield does when he's under pressure. Because that's kind of that's kind of what I feel like the Eagles can do. Their pass rush, in my opinion, is much better than what Mayfield has seen in the first two games of the year. I felt like, the Vikings, we may have talked about it on the show. I know I talked about it I wrote about it, actually. I thought that was a really easy matchup for Mayfield because the Vikings secondary is so poor. And then, of course, last week, he gets the Bears, which they're as big of a mess as any team in football. So how does Mayfield deal with the Eagles generating pressure like they'll be able to? On the other side, the Eagles, this team just doesn't look like they're fully clicking at this point, which means I really don't have much of an interest in laying points with them on the road. Mark, I kind of have a feeling this one has points, though. I kind of like the over here. It feels a little low. I think the Eagles are going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to use Hurts. I don't think that they're going to be able to do what they did last week. And you're not going to get another huge game from Swift like you had last week. I think that they're going to have to push the ball downfield. Hurts is going to have to throw, at this Bucs secondary. On the other hand, now I don't know that I like Mayfield to just be firing the ball around and throwing it on the Eagles, but it's going to be hard to run against them. Tough team to run against. So you're probably going to have Mayfield taking shots, which could turn into a pick six. I mean, he's not the guy that I want, having to make tough throws. So maybe he throws one and it goes the other way. The total feels low to me. I don't know exactly how this one gets there, Mark, but I do think there's going to be some points.
Well, look, here's my take on this game. And I've said this all week long, and if you follow me on Twitter and you see the videos I put out, I said it last week on my long and the short of it in the NFL. There's no way I'm backing the Buccaneers. I think they're absolute frauds. First of all, they won a game in week one where the Vikings turned it over 3 times, twice in the red zone, 20-17. Then they went out and beat the Bears. That doesn't count. The Bears are barely an NFL team at this point, and there's so much dysfunction going on in the front office and everywhere else on the coaching staff that doesn't count. So I don't want to take anything away from Baker Mayfield yet, but the point simply is that the Buccaneers are not a 2-0 team. And I would argue, if the Vikings win that game, let's say they win that game 24-20 in week one, they have one less turnover and they win the game 24-20. My guess is this line opens at 7.5 in favor of the Eagles minus 7.5 on the road. Some sharp money would come in on Tampa and bring it back down to about 7 or 6.5, somewhere in that range. But nonetheless, the Eagles are just a flat out better team with a better coach and a better quarterback. I can't get there on Tampa Bay. I absolutely cannot get there on Tampa. For me, it's Eagles or pass. It's probably a game that I'm not going to bet on, but I agree with you. the Eagles offense is still waiting for that breakout game. Like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith have been really quiet through the first two games. I think they get engaged here. Tampa Bay has a bottom 10 pass defense in the NFL right now. The Eagles have the third worst pass defense in the NFL. So I think people are throwing. Both of these teams only give up like 55 yards a game on the ground. So I think both these teams are going to come out throwing. And I think there's going to be points. I even know there's money coming in on the under, too. Like, I'm just completely on the opposite side of everything where the money is going here. So I do have a client play on this game. So if you go to my page over at Sports Memo, you'll see it. Let me give out one more here that's also a free play, but it's also a client play on this game. Because the Eagles' pass defense is bad, I don't know if it's going to get better anytime soon. I don't dip in the prop market often, but Baker Mayfield, his passing yards prop is at 229.5. He threw for 317 last week. Now, he didn't throw that much against the Vikings. He only threw for about 173 yards, I think it was. But the game script was a little bit different there. And again, the Vikings kept shooting themselves in the foot with long drives and not putting any points up. So I would think here in this spot, Baker Mayfield, by the way, rated third in PFF this year of all quarterbacks as far as, his quarterback rating, according to Pro Football Focus. So he's off to a decent start. And, humble Baker is the better Baker. So when Baker starts talking crap and getting his mouth running in the media, that's when you want to fade him. But right now he's humble Baker, and I think he'll have some success here. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to win this game, and I think it's more high scoring than people think. I hope it is, but I'm going Baker Mayfield over 229.5 passing yards tonight.
Yeah, I just to add one more thing to the over, that kind of makes the point I was trying to make right there and why I would lean toward over in this game. Because I think you could get some mistakes from Mayfield, but I also think you could get some good from him. And if that's the case, I can almost guarantee the Eagles are going to have to throw the ball, and they will be able to throw the ball because they have a great offensive line. So why not just take the chance with the over? I mean, you get a pick six thrown in there, it probably goes over easily.
You look at the four receivers in this game. Mention A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Don't forget about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the other side. Like, there are plenty of weapons for both of these quarterbacks to get the ball to. And then you add DeAndre Swift out of the backfield in the passing game. I know I'm on the opposite side of where the money is going here, but it's Eagles or pass for me, and I'm with you. I think the total is higher than what people think here. So, let's see how this first Monday night game breaks down. All right, the second game here is between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 0-2. And if there was ever a must-win desperation spot for a team, it is the Cincinnati Bengals here at home in Week 3. We have a lot of injury questions about Joe Burrow. Not sure if he's going to play. The number currently sits at 3 as we are waiting for, news on Joe Burrow, and I'm sure it's going to change, as soon as we get official word on what Burrow's status is for tonight. But I'm seeing 3s across the board on the wager talk. This opened at 7.5. So we have a lot of questions. It doesn't look like Burrow's going to play, but I'll ask you this, Trig. If Burrow doesn't play, can you still back Cincinnati?
Mark, I think that's the only way I would back Cincinnati. I think that's the only way I would back Cincinnati, to be honest with you, after the overreaction happened. I think that's the only way I could bet Cincinnati would be if Burrow gets ruled out, the Rams take a bunch of money. This number moves a ton because the overreaction would be crazy, right? Like leading up to game time, Burrow gets scratched, and then all of a sudden, all this Rams money comes in to move the number. And it's like, that's when I would want to jump in with Cincinnati because right now, like, I don't know that I really want to back an injured Joe Burrow. I made that mistake last week. I had a 5% play in the Bengals last week, and he just wasn't even close to the as ready as I thought he might be. Or, I figured, okay, maybe week 1, he's got to shake some rust off, whatever. But he looked like he was an injured quarterback last week, out there doing his best. And, he still gave his team a chance to win. But, man, like, I wouldn't want to come into that's not what I want to bet on here. Now, if everyone starts to bet the Rams, if let's say Joe Burrow gets ruled out, all this Rams money comes in, and all of a sudden I can get the Bengals at home or even as an underdog as a pick, I would actually roll the dice in that scenario. I kind of got burned doing it yesterday with the Panthers. We talked off air. It's like funny because we talked about the Seahawks on our short last week and whatnot. And I actually decided like the Panthers were a much more desirable play for me with Dalton in there. It's kind of the same thing. But in this case, it would be not because I think Browning's a better quarterback than Burrow, but because I don't think the line move that would happen once Burrow gets officially ruled out, if that were the case, would be justified it would be too much. And then I'd be willing to come in on the other side because the Bengals still have a lot of weapons on this offense, right? Like Browning, forget about like what you think of him. This is still an offense with a lot of weapons and a defense that could give Stafford some trouble here. You look at the game last week with the 49ers, and the reason that the Rams kind of ended up, kind of getting beat in that game was the 49ers started to get pressure, started to get to Stafford a little bit. It was what the Seahawks could not do in week one. And that was why the Rams were able to sort of light them up, in my opinion. So right now I have no play. I won't have a client play here, but I have my strong take is this: if Burrow gets ruled out of this game and this number flips to like goes to pick, or like let's say the Bengals are even a dog, I think they'd be worth a look at that point. Otherwise, just no play for me.
Yeah, and again, I would tend to think that this is a game for me generally that feels like it would trend more to the under. Coincidentally enough, you got 44.5 out there in the first game, 45 in this one. If you get no Joe Burrow, I think it's going to be a defensive, matchup here. And I think, I'm with you that the overreaction, if you get Cincinnati at a pick or even as a dog, it's absolutely worth it to jump on them. I mean, I think 100% that's the way to go because the overreaction usually is just that, an overreaction here. I would also add that if there is no Joe Burrow, maybe Joe Mixon is again, I don't dip in the prop market often, but maybe you want to try to jump on his rushing yards prop because he would probably, or total yards prop, because he would have a bigger role in the offense between these two teams in this game. And then really, the Bengals have to figure out a way to get to Matt Stafford. Now, I still don't know that this Rams offense is all that great. I know Nakua, the kid that has, gone bonkers the first 2 weeks. How do you say Puka Nakua? That's his name. But
yeah,
I think that there's probably a little bit of an overreaction too. They played a flawed Seattle team in week one, and they really weren't in that game in week two. It's a 10-point game, and it was late that they scored.
Yeah, and Mark, I want to follow up to that and just say, like, listen, like this is the NFL. We've seen this so many times. Like these teams, these coaches are so good at preparing for something once they've seen it, once there's a little film on it. And I think that's what you go back to the 49ers game. Once they like kind of stopped allowing Stafford to just like, get rid of the ball really quickly, get it into the hands of Nakua and make a play, the 49ers kind of took over in that game. And you're correct. The final score was deceiving, right? Like the Rams came down and kicked a field goal with no time left to cover. The 49ers probably deserved to cover in that game. So, if the Bengals defense, which is still a very good defense, and they have an active, defensive front, can disrupt that, and, they're going to probably have the upper hand in this game. So that's why it would be Bengals or pass for me.
Yeah, I'm with you again. I think that's the way you have to wait and see with this. Unfortunately, it just is what it is the nature of the NFL. So any final thoughts here, Trig? I know we usually kind of take a quick look at Survivor. I know it's Monday night and it's early on, but there are a lot of close spreads this week. Not a lot of big ones out there when it comes to Survivor.
Two final thoughts. My one final thought is for Survivor. If you've got the 49ers and you still have them, don't save them for the holiday. Use them this week. They're a 14-point home favorite against the Cardinals team that just somehow beat the Cowboys, right? Like, huge win for them. The thought of the Cardinals being able to sort of pull off back-to-back wins as 2 touchdown dogs in back-to-back weeks is, I just can't see it happening. I would not save the 49ers and use one of the other options this week. There aren't many good ones to hope that just because you might need the 49ers on a holiday. Just figure out a different team to take on a holiday. The 49ers is probably the Survivor play this week. My last thought, Mark, for anyone that listened, I did a Spaces a couple days ago, and I said that a pretty sharp teaser, it looked like at the time, was Steelers to Rams. Okay, just based on what the markets were doing. And this was obviously, like, I think the Rams were sitting there at 2.5. I think there was news that Burrow might not play. If you see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, if you had that teaser in your pocket and then Burrow gets ruled out and suddenly the Bengals are a dog, I'd absolutely come back and try to middle it, like knowing that you'd have at least like an 8 or 9, maybe even a 10-point middle, depending on where that number ends up. So, like, that's just something that popped into my head. But no, I think Kelly and Chris are going to talk Survivor tomorrow. But like, my only Survivor info, don't save the 49ers. If you can use them at home this week, use them. Probably going to be the best spot to use them all season.
All right, that'll do it for us here on the Hustle Show, on this Hustle Short on this Monday, September 25th. And oh, by the way, Trig, real quick, I probably should have done this before I wrap things up. My survivor play coming up this week probably would be the New Orleans Saints at home against the Buccaneers. I want to see how the rest of tonight unfolds, but it's a short number, under a field goal, but still like the spot here, depending on what Tampa has to do going on the road to New Orleans on a short week. Would be probably at the top of my list for next week if you're looking for an under the radar survivor. So for Adam Trigger, make sure you follow him on Twitter at TopFlightSI. I'm at Mark Zeno, MarkZinno. Again, follow the Hustle Show podcast. Like and subscribe to that Wager Talk YouTube channel. Smash that thumbs up, that like button there, and tell us why you love the show. We certainly appreciate your time. For Adam Trigger, I'm Mark Zeno. Thanks for watching this Hustle Short. Tune into the full episode of the Hustle Show podcast every Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Have a great Monday. Enjoy the games tonight, everybody.